Tony Dungy is with us. And Tony, first of all, why were you in Seattle yesterday?
Well, working for NBC, Paul, and we are trying to get set up for the Super Bowl. So the plan was Rodney Harrison would go to New England. I would go to Seattle. We'd look at the championship games, and then whoever won the games, we'd go hang out with that team for a week. So I'm going to be here this week in Seattle, get in the stories and get in the lead up to the Super Bowl. What
did you learn about the Seahawks yesterday?
Well, they're a resilient team, and they believe in themselves. They didn't play well in the first 3.5 quarters, but never gave up. And I'll tell you what, they are a tough team also. Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas, you hear a lot about these guys, but they were both playing with one arm in the second half yesterday. Wouldn't come out of the game, made some plays where you say, how are they doing this? But I think that really signified just their mental toughness and physical toughness, and it was impressive because with 5 minutes left, it did not look good at all.
You mentioned mental toughness, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, right when we came on the air, and I noticed that too on the defensive side of the ball, and also with Russell Wilson, the way he was able to come back and hold it together and play his best at the end of the game after he'd had his worst game ever. How is it a head coach can instill mental toughness in his team so then he can watch it play out when it matters most on Sundays?
Well, you work on it in practice. You put people in difficult situations. You test them out and just try to get them to function and do the right things in tough situations. But I think some guys, you either have it or you don't. I saw Russell Wilson, Paul, in the Rose Bowl. My son was playing for Oregon at the time, and I watched that Rose Bowl game, and Oregon was scoring at such a fast pace, and Wilson was just on the opposite sideline, cool and calm, and every time he'd bring those guys back. And I remember saying that at that time when he was a senior in college, I think this guy's going to be special. And he just seems to have that self-confidence, not cockiness, but confidence to be calm in those big situations.
Other side of the field, all kinds of disappointment that the Packers have to deal with for the rest of the offseason based off the way that game played out. Do you think that they coached cautiously at the end of the game?
No, they did the right things. And early on, I was kind of second-guessing, too. Boy, you're down in there close. You're going for field goals. But they will look back at that. They didn't punch it in the red zone. They had an interception on the first drive, got stopped at the 1-foot line. They got stopped again inside the 5. They gave away some points early, but I thought Mike McCarthy played Seattle in Seattle the way you have to play them. And they didn't let Seattle's defense take control of things. They had the game in hand. You've got to finish it out, and you've got to recover the onside kick. If you do that, then everybody's saying he coached a great game.
Hey, Coach, this is Jonathan Vilma. Good to hear from you. I wanted to ask you, would you have done anything different defensively when you noticed that the momentum shifted to the Seattle Seahawks? Offensively, they started getting it going. For the first 3.5 quarters, you could play man on that offense, and you had success. Would you have done anything differently later in the game?
Well, at the end, Jonathan, I think they got into a pass mode, feeling like, hey, we're 2 scores ahead with 4 minutes here, and they're going to throw. That's when Seattle, for the first time, got some of that running game going, got the read option going, looked like they're in a nickel defense and really playing pass. I probably would have kept going with the same thing that got me to the dance, just playing aggressive, crowding the line of scrimmage, and playing that tight man coverage in the secondary. That's what they did for 3.5 quarters.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree. It's just that I'm hearing all the rumblings of people want Don Capers fired because of his play calling, but I felt like it was the same play calling that held Seattle to 7 points, and the only touchdown was on a fake field goal.
Yeah, it did. And Jonathan, you mentioned the fake field goal. Of all the things that you could be critical of the Packers, that was my only question. You're up 16-0.
Agreed.
Their offense is doing nothing. You got to be in some type of field goal safe alignment. I mean, and you're not thinking fake on 4th and 10, but that was the only thing that was going to get them back there. 3 points didn't make that much difference, and they had a rush on, and Seattle saw it and had the right play dialed up. That was my only criticism. I would have been in some type of field goal safe in that situation.
No. So, as a head coach the day after, considering how that game played out, more disappointed in your special teams or your defense today?
Well, the special teams, those were the 2 big plays. If you don't give up the fake field goal, you stop them there, you don't even get to the onside kick, probably. And then, there's nothing you can do about that. You practice that. I know Bostic, he knew his assignment was to block those pursuers and let Jordy Nelson catch the ball. The ball's up in the air. It looks like it's coming to you. Just human nature takes over. And, I just feel so badly for him because he's going to live with that for a long, long time.
Now, Coach, what do you say to your team after a loss like that?
Well, the first thing you say is you don't put it on one player. You don't put it on one group, the special teams. We all had opportunities. We've got to punch those balls in. We've got to finish off the thing defensively. We've just got to come back next year. We know how tough it is to get here, but let this pull us together and go forward. It's very, very tough. I mean, I can't even imagine that plane ride to know you're a few seconds from the Super Bowl and you let it slip out of your hands. But I think that's where the coach has to take over and say, you know what, we've got to look forward. We can't look back.
Tony Dungy of Football Night in America joining us. Paul Burmeister and John Vilma sitting in for Dan Patrick here today. And speaking of going forward and looking ahead to next year, Tony, how does a head coach separate himself from all the emotion and disappointment he's feeling right now and get past that and start to think about change? Do I need to make change with my personnel, with players and coaches? How much longer after a disappointment like that can you really rationally think about what needs to happen next?
You have to get away from it for a while, Paul, before you start thinking about that because you are in the moment. And I always would tell my teams after playoff losses, that there's 20 teams that didn't make the playoffs, and some teams that maybe finished 2-14 that feel better than we do right now. We've got to get over that feeling, keep the disappointment, but let things calm down. Then you look at it rationally and don't make knee-jerk decisions. Look at what you did well, evaluate it, where your team has strengths and weaknesses, and then go forward in a rational way and not in a knee-jerk reaction.
As far as the AFC title game, Tony, did you anticipate a blowout like that?
I did not. I thought this time Indianapolis would play them closer and play them better, and when the game was tight at halftime, that's kind of what I envisioned. But there's something about that matchup. New England just really doesn't give Indianapolis an opportunity to get in their game. Bill Belichick does a great job of taking away what you do best. So if you're not multidimensional, it's tough. And the Colts have great pass defense and pass defenders. They have a nice passing attack with Andrew Luck, but the focus just seems to be when Belichick lines up to play against them, we're going to take away the passing game, we're going to run the ball at them, and the matchup is just not good. So it was a stunning blowout, but no, I did not expect that.
As long as we're talking about taking away what the other team does best, and we have 13 more days to talk about this at length, but my first crack at you for the Super Bowl, Rob Gronkowski against that Seahawks pass defense. How do you think they ought to line up and try and take that away?
Well, I think this is where the Patriots have an edge. They're going to do some things to get Cam Chancellor out of that line of scrimmage box. He is a tremendous player, especially when he's close to the line of scrimmage. What formations can they get in? How can they use Gronkowski to get Chancellor out of there and get him out of his element where Gronkowski has the advantage, running pass routes, flanked out wide, those kinds of things. So I think that is 2 weeks in the making of Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick saying, how can we use Rob and get him in those wide receiver alignments to take advantage of his skills?
Yeah, but Coach, I kind of disagree with you on that because I've never seen one player take over a game versus Seattle defense, particularly the Legion of Boom. So if we have Gronkowski spread out, wouldn't it be as simple as, okay, and anytime he's spread out, Chancellor can go out there, Chancellor doesn't have to go out there. We're going to roll up on him anyway, and then we'll make sure we can stop the run with the front seven. So I'm just thinking I'm playing out the chess match between the two teams.
Yeah, no, very interesting because that's what Green Bay did yesterday. They started out with 3 wide receiver sets, 4 receiver sets, and Chancellor was out wide. And then they went to some nickel defenses, brought another corner in, and got Chancellor back in the box. So it's going to be, hey, they do this, how do we respond? And you're right about Seattle. They play basic coverages. They don't get in a lot of matchup situations, so they can adjust well. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Tony, what impresses you the most about that Patriot offense? The way Tom Brady continues to seemingly improve upon his Hall of Fame career, or the fact that they can just run any running back in there, and he can go for over 100 yards.
Well, the big thing, Paul, is they can have a different game plan every week, which is unusual. Normally you have something you do well, and that is your staple. But it can be Jonas Gray and 40 carries one week, and then the next week it's 5 wide receivers. And then the next week it's Gronkowski and Wright and the tight ends, and it's mixing. And then the next week it's running the ball with a different back. And that, I think, is the brilliance of Tom Brady, that they can come in on Wednesday and say, okay, here's our game plan this week. It's totally different. We may not have done this for 8 weeks, but that's what we're going to do, and he can go out and execute it.
Coach, I want to go big picture here with you one time and also call upon your experience as a player in Pittsburgh playing for Chuck Noll. Last night, Bill Belichick becomes the all-time winningest coach in postseason history. Now, it seems to me that Belichick and Noll have completely different kinds of personalities. You know them both very well. You know what makes them tick. What is one common trait both those guys have?
I think just supreme intelligence, number one, very, very smart men, and then number two, being able to focus on what is important, no frills, and that's how Chuck was, and that's how Coach Belichick is. Here's what we're going to have to do to win. Let's do this and not worry about anything else, and getting their guys to be able to focus on what it really takes to win. I think that's a similar concept to both men.
Hey, Coach, you have a Dan Quinn who's expected to be the Atlanta Falcons head coach as soon as the Super Bowl is over. You have a defense that is the Legion of Boom, #1 in the NFL, and deservedly so. What is their approach to a Bill Belichick, Tom Brady coached offense when, as we said, they keep it basic, but man, Belichick can attack you in so many ways?
Well, here's what I expect to see. The strength of that defense, those guys are big and physical. I was down on the field yesterday, and I didn't realize how big their secondary is, their linebackers. They're great physical run defenders. I think Bill is going to try to get them out of their element. A lot of inside passing game, Edelman, Gronkowski, Shane Vereen, guys catching the ball inside and try to make them pass defenders. I would expect to see them spread out. The last time these two teams played, Brady threw 58 passes. I think you're going to see the same thing, 50 to 60 passes, and make those big defenders become pass defenders in tight spaces.
Can Brady's arm hold up?
We'll find out.
We saw what happened with Manning and his arm.
It's going to be a very similar game plan to what they did against Baltimore. Mix a run here and there, but win the game with Tom Brady throwing short, quick, precise passes.
Tony Dungy spending the week in Seattle. That means when it comes time to pick a team, you're probably going to lean towards the Seahawks, right?
I picked Denver last year, and I just thought they were playing at a high level offensively. Patriots are playing at a high level offensively, but something tells me in these games you got to go with that dominant defense. Jonathan probably agrees with me. Defense wins these type of games.
Always.
The old defensive coordinator coming out much more so than the old Gopher quarterback. Tony Dungy in Seattle and also a Football Night in America. Tony, thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Great being with you.
Thanks, Tony.